Hello, I'm Diego, a future game developer, and today we're on part 5 of the Puzzle Fight development series. Today we're going to modify Freddy's script. This script controls the character's movement speed, connects to the state machine, allows for keyboard manipulation, and also verifies where the animatronic needs to look. Originally, I thought each character would need their own script to manipulate all of this. Well, rather I thought I'd only control character speed, but in the end I added more. On this yo sé, pensant à se sentimos. A couple of comments suggested it would be better to transform this script, which was originally only for Freddy, into a generic one to use with other characters in the future. It will be renamed Fighter, and I'll place it in each character's parent nodes, making it 100% reusable, bringing pure benefits. First, I won't have to copy and paste the base code for all characters, only modifying a few details. And second, I'd save the world from global warming. Guys, don't forget how important recycling is, but I wouldn't just change the name. I'd also add and modify some things, like improving the code sorta, just in case I enslave a programmer or two in the future, and it won't be too hard for them to understand this code. But the main change was adding the spot variable. This code is used to modify the properties of the object or character directly from the node editor. Before, to change the character's speed, I had to modify its values directly in the script, but now I can do it from the parent node. I'll try to explain it in a better way. Let's say the script directly changes the character's speed. This causes some problems. For example, if I use this script for all characters, they will all have the exact same speed, and that's something you can't do in a fighting game. Everyone needs to have their own mobility. That or copy and paste the same script, with the only difference being changing the speed values. At first, this didn't seem like such a bad idea. Actually, I was planning this, but if you want to modify the script attached to the character's parent node to add a new action or animation, you'd have to do this for every animatronic, which would eventually become very annoying. That's what the sport property is for, which lets you change Freddy's settings without touching the code. When I modify the script, it does affect the parent node, but when I modify the node's variable, it doesn't affect the code. Thanks to this, each character can control their speed individually, all using the same script. Now that it's perfectly clear how this works, we can modify the character's jump, since it looks like they opened a pizzeria on the moon. I would assign the jump force put at which obviously regulates the strength of the jump and also gravity, the force that pulls the character down. I have to adjust these two to have decent mobility. Since these two are opposing forces, we have to change them little by little until it's right. I would add the option to modify the jump distance forward and backward, since it's too short to comfortably pass over the second player. So, you'd add 3 new modifiers, one to change the length of the forward jump, and a different one for the backward jump. That way we can give it a slight variation if I feel like it. And the last is jump speed. The higher the number, the faster it will move in the air. Okay, now that the whole jump topic is finished, we can start with the hitbox, but I don't want to start with the attack collision box, but rather the one that prevents the character from falling through the floor. And I really had no idea how to make this work correctly, since Alfredo currently stays on top of the second player. Initially, I thought I had to modify the hitbox shape to a rounder one, and force the character to fall if it was above the second player. But I wasn't sure how this would work, so I asked ChatGPT. I know many people don't like me using AI, but it's a tool that not only gives you code, but also very useful advice. For example, it told me how collisions between two players work, making it very clear that you don't use the collision shatter 2D node, meaning normal collisions, but rather pure code for this, since quote, you have to create an invisible barrier around the character. Although it's not a physical wall, it's more like a constant push that prevents the two players from making contact. Instead of calling it a hitbox, we could call it a pushbox. Perhaps this isn't the best example, but I picture it like two magnets that have been flipped, so when you try to bring them close, they just repel. But if you'd prefer a more amusing example, we could say we're giving Goyo's infinity to Freddy. In fact, we've already utilized this very same logic before. Remember that so the two characters don't separate too much and don't move beyond the camera, we created a maximum separation instance. Well, this is the same case, only we will integrate a minimal instance with everything working perfectly on the first try. No. Just kidding, nothing in programming ever works right the first time. Now that the collision boxes only detect the floor, the walls I placed around the stage don't work at all, and Freddy just falls right through them into the void. And since I didn't set a limit on the invisible barrier above the character, it's impossible to jump on top of the other player. And even though there are several errors, they're actually not very difficult to fix. I just need to create a pushbox around the stage so Freddy can't fall off. I choose the position of the pushboxes by number, so obviously I took advantage and made it an export, in case I want to change the position of the invisible barrier in a smaller scenario, reusing the same code. I also want to clarify that even though the 2D collision shatter doesn't work on the sides, I'm still going to leave it since it still works for the floor, although I had to shrink it so it wouldn't be a nuisance. The last bug I had to fix was the jump. Even though the character was clearly above the other, the system keeps pushing him, which feels like an invisible wall. To fix this, I added a height check. This is where a very important variable called vertical and punch tolerance comes in. This variable defines how much height difference there must be between the two characters for the game to understand that one is above the other. When the height difference exceeds that value, the push effect is deactivated, allowing the character to naturally jump over their opponent, just like in classic fighting games, which yields a very decent result. I didn't achieve any of this with complex physics or unusual collision detection, but rather through simple positional control of the characters using pure logic. Although it still requires a few minor adjustments, for the time being it's perfectly fine. I just had to fix a bug, because when both characters are in the air, one Freddy can use the other Freddy to jump higher, but I immediately spotted the error, and it wasn't a coding bug. I had to shrink the hitbox even more, as it was acting like a floor, allowing the other player to double jump. So I shrunk it, leaving it like a tiny square, or rather, a tiny dot, which cannot be touched thanks to Freddy's infinite reach. Now, it only works to detect the floor and prevent the bear from falling into the void. And now, midair collisions work. But that brought another problem. Now Freddy doesn't detect when he needs to stop. Before, Freddy had 0 speed when he detected the other hitbox. But now that it only works on the floor, Freddy can't tell when the second player is in front of him, causing them to push each other. So I had to zero it out when it reaches the minimum push distance. Practically the same with the hitbox, forcing 0 velocity when they touch, so they stop pushing each other. Now that I've more or less finished with all the mobility aspects and how they interact, we can move on to the hitbox, but the real hitbox, the one that handles damage. First, I would increase the health from 100 to 1000, just to make it more comfortable, and so I don't have to use decimal numbers. So, since I changed the amount of health, I also have to change the amount of damage the weak hit does. Before, it was 10 damage, and with only 100 health points, it only took 10 weak hits to deplete all the health, making for an absurdly short fight. But now, it would take 100 weak hits to deplete all the health, which is now a very low amount of damage. So, I decided it was better to set it at 20, that way it would require 50 hits to fully deplete its health. I would then modify the weak hit script to properly connect with the fighter's base script and create an export for all 3 types of hits to allow modification of the damage amount directly from the inspector, just as I did with the movement speed and the jump power. And to precisely decide at which specific frame of the attack it deals damage, I added a key in the weak hit animation. This method also allows me to make several hits with different strengths in a single animation. It might not be very useful for normal hits, but for special commands, it's perfect. I do the same as with the weak attack. Create a hitbox with the collision shatter 2D and adjust it to the impact zone. I'd use the same weak attack script with some minor modifications and make it deal 40 points of damage. I'm not sure if it should be double the damage or a little more. I'd like your opinion in the comments. Keep in mind that the medium hit lasts twice as long as the weak hit. I set the heavy attack to 60, which is the combined damage of the medium and weak hits. However, the heavy attack is different from the other two. Its hitbox is inside the hurt box, meaning the box that receives damage. I knew Freddy was hitting himself, but since I didn't want to fix it, I just made the hitbox far from the hurt box. But that problem is bothering me now. I used to just hide it, not actually fix it, but I believe it's time to finally fix this issue. So I went ahead and checked the node structure. Since the hitbox is a child of the character, I simply verify that the detected target belongs to the same parent node. Basically, if the character receiving the hit is the same as the hitbox owner, the damage is ignored. In this way, we do not depend on additional data, but on the hierarchy of the node tree, which is much more stable and secure, and that's it. With this, we completely eliminate self-damage from the combat system. Well, that's all for this video. I apologize if I haven't uploaded videos for 2 months, but things happened and I didn't have the time. But now we're back with weekly videos. I would have preferred to start uploading longer videos monthly, but I think this format is fine for the moment. But with nothing more to say, ciao!